Hello, my name is Mark Miller, and I'm part of Cisco's Global Collaboration, Sales, and Strategy organization. And it's my pleasure to be with you here today to talk about the workplace in the post-COVID world. In my role at Cisco, as a member of the collaboration team, I spend about half of my time with clients, talking to them around their workplace strategies and then the important role that technology plays. And the other half of my time I spend with Cisco's IT, real estate, and HR organizations as we're evolving our workplace environment. And what I hope to share with you today is a bit about the role that we think technology is going to play as employees return back into the workplace. First, a bit about Cisco. We are about 140,000 employees spread across the globe, occupying about 470 buildings, physical locations. Our workforce is split somewhat evenly. About 76,000 employees are those that are Cisco badged. The remaining are contractors, freelancers, people that are extremely valuable part of our labor pool that allow us to sort of ebb and flow with the needs of our business. When we look at our real estate portfolio, it's about 20 million square feet of property, as I said, over about 470 buildings. And, over the last 6 to 7 years, we have really looked to reshape that real estate portfolio. Like many of you, we've gone through an evolution where we've actually consolidated a lot of our portfolio, almost a third, and used a part of that savings of that consolidation to redesign and invest in the remaining properties. And as part of that, we've done like what a lot of companies have done. We've gone from very traditionally oriented, sort of cubicle-based workplace environments. This is an example of one that was on our campus in San Jose, California, that was transformed a few years back. This office, held about 420 people. You'll see a number of conference rooms in green, those that are probably larger, medium to large in size, a mix of technology. And as we transform that footprint, we had a very different experience for our employees. As you see, a lot more of the square footage dedicated to collaboration activities, still holding the same number of employees with just a lot of unassigned desks. What you see is an explosion in red of huddle rooms and in orange of privacy rooms being 1 to 2 person spaces. Because what we realized was our people were coming to the office to collaborate. And largely they were collaborating in smaller groups. The average meeting at Cisco, about 3.7 people in a room and 2 people remote. And we did a lot of this activity across the globe, right? We looked at our entire portfolio, looked for places to optimize and redesign and rethink about how people work and how people use the workplaces. We looked at places for people to concentrate, create places for people to concentrate, collaborate, learn, and socialize. In every Cisco work environment, you'll see these 4 activities being supported. And as I said, I think we've designed some rather remarkable workplaces. This is a location in Austin, Texas, where you see a mix of sort of the socializing and learning space together. North Carolina, another sort of socializing space, a mixed-use collaboration space. Sydney, Australia, in Barcelona, Spain. But in every one of these projects that we've undertaken over the last few years, we've realized that success requires alignment. It means that space design, technology, and policy and culture all have to come together. And arguably, that means that IT, real estate, and HR need to come together. But just a few short months ago, we had something come upon us that I don't think anybody could have forecasted, right? We think about the impact that COVID and this pandemic has had on every aspect of our life, how we live, how we learn, how we work, and how we play. It's affected every aspect of every one of our lives, and obviously the workplace being a big part of that. The things that we have been focused on around open plan, around smaller spaces, around high mobility and manufacturing collisions and maximizing density, all those things were challenged. And, arguably you know, the fact that, we've had to address these things now and started to rethink of these have created great challenges, but also great opportunities. Think about what happened. We at Cisco, we had a fairly even balance of different types of employees, different types of work styles within our workplaces. And in fact, I show you this chart here, which I think is really important to say that we went through an exercise a few years back where we segmented our employees. Every Cisco employee falls into one of these personas, either highly mobile, campus mobile, neighborhood collaborator, workstation anchored, or remote worker. And what happens with those is you'll see, that showed us, the type of work they were doing, the how often they went to the workplace, when they went to the workplace, what they used the workplace for, and what type of services they need. Overnight, we went to a highly remote workforce. We went to a workforce that was probably 125 to 130,000 people working at home. Right. And obviously there were some great challenges with that, as many companies have saw, right? But the focus was at that point was really just on survival. Back in March when the pandemic really hit, and we moved everybody home, we moved the entire workforce home, we shut down every office of Cisco. Our focus was really just on care and comfort, preserving business operations, and really supporting our employees wherever we could. When we did go to the office, it was based on extreme situations, people that absolutely had to be there. It was permissive use. And when folks went to the office, they found the office reconfigured. Our technology decisions and the things that we focused on from a technology perspective were really focused on how do we enable a work from home environment? How do we give people secure access? How do we preserve teams and how they collaborate together? A huge focus, obviously, on employee communications. We did weekly check-ins with our senior leadership that were some of the most highly attended that we had seen in our company's history. We would get 25 to 26,000 people live on an employee check-in call, with the remaining balance of employees taking advantage of listening to the recordings. We had to rethink our learning strategy and all the training sessions we had to move all those off board. The goal here was, just to alleviate fears. But what we did prove was that we could be productive outside the workplace, that even though we had a strong remote work culture here at Cisco, that really even more of those roles could go off board, right? But there were some challenges, and some of the feedback that I continue to hear both internally and externally, that people are missing certain things about being in the office. And those are, for a lot of people, having an effective environment to work at home was a struggle, right? They didn't have the space, they didn't have a professional environment. The second was they really desired and missed the lack the casual or impromptu collaboration that went on in the workplace, right? All collaboration was scheduled. It was from 10 to 11 and from 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What they missed was the dark spaces, the conversation that happened in the hallway, the conversations that have at the cafe, walking between meetings. What we also saw is, a lot of our introverts do a lot of their sharing outside of a meeting. So it really took a lot for us to sort of retrain and consciously think about how we were going to bring people into meetings when those meetings were virtual, how we were going to draw people into the conversation. We saw a concern around maintaining emotional connections, right? Those social connections that are also important. The sharing of tacit knowledge. And this is really important around your new hires, right? Your new hires, when they first start in the business, those people that are early in career, the workplace is an extremely important place for them to pick up not only information, but to build a network and to understand reputation capital, right? And those three things are really difficult to obtain and build upon when you're working virtually. So we had started having some conscious conversations about that. And obviously the last is around information and organizational latency. things are just slower when people are disconnected. Time and distance have an impact on how a business operates. And all these things together really sort of drove our decision, right, to really want to get back into the workplace. But as people return to the workplace, there's a couple of things you need to manage, right? The first is, obviously the legal implications, and then the government and the medical. These are things that are done upon you, right? These are things that are done on that are coming from the outside world that we just need to address. The one that we control are employee concerns, and they fall, I believe, into three categories: physical, mental, and emotional. These are the areas that we as companies and we as leaders really need to consider, right? And I think technology plays a big role in alleviating many of those concerns and getting people back into the workplace. So when we think about going back to the workplace, right, we think about that as phase two, this idea of we're moving from survive to revive, right? And I think revive of the workplace is going to happen for a very long time. It's going to happen, on my estimation, probably 18 to 24 months. It's going to happen well past any vaccine or therapeutics becoming available to help us treat this situation that we're in. This is really about adapting to the new normal, right? And addressing this. And I think what's going to happen in this environment is we're going to go from permissive use of the workplace to controlled use, meaning we're going to see a larger population return to the workplace based on your job role. The way that's working at Cisco is we are identifying the parts of the world that it's safe to go back. We're identifying the critical resources that need to be back in the office, whether those be operations people, those be engineers, security. You'll know the people that really need to be in the workplace. Many times we're thinking now, I start to talk to clients, they're thinking of how starting to bring their new hires back into the workplace, right? When they go to the workplace, you're going to see an environment that's now not just reconfigured, but retrofitted. You're going to see a lot more accommodations being made around the workplace and around the physical workplace to preserve distance and separation and just sort of preserve the health and safety of people. And there's going to be a certain amount of technology in the workplace that will be quickly adapted to help this. And I'm going to talk a bit about this in a bit more detail, right? But the goal here is to win back the trust of employees. As a colleague of mine said, the workplace is going to need to work a lot harder to earn the trust back of employees, right? So, but I think it's going to also happen here is we're going to see a lot of rapid innovation. And we're starting to see that not only within our environment, with many of our clients right now. There's a lot to be said for technology and technology's role in the workplace. But with that, I think you have to make this a bit of a measured activity, right? I think this idea of looking at innovative ways to adapt technology to your workplace environment and not think about big, massive projects, although those may be relevant in the long term. I think what we need to do is a bunch of quick wins right now to get people excited and comfortable going back into the workplace. For us as employees go back, what we're doing is, distance learning is critical, right? So every Cisco employee that is identified as somebody we're going to have return to the office. And as we move into from phase 2 to phase 3 and bring more people back into the office, we're at about 25% in selected countries right now. When we start moving more people back, everybody's going to go through training, right? And they're going to go through some online training, and that training is going to at least establish a baseline for what the safe measures that we all need to take as corporate citizens, but also some very specialized training around the specific things we need to know per geography, whether that be a country, a state or province, or a city, right? When you take that training, that is going to make your badge active to actually get in the office, right? So this training is really, really important, and having a training platform that allows you to get that, push that training out to your employees is really, really critical. The second thing is we built a small app inside Cisco. We see a lot of clients doing the same thing, a daily pre-screening app. When you go to the office, right, the day you decide, you'll have to pick up your mobile phone. You'll have to answer some questions about, have you been exposed? Have you lost your sense of smell and taste? Are you running a fever? As you answer these pre-screening questions, you're going to get a banner page. And that banner page is going to be red or green, and it'll decide whether you should go to the office or not. When you go to the office, you're going to show that to the lobby ambassador or security to gain access to the building. When you go into the building, right, we're starting to see digital signage being much more relevant, and not just the stuff that plays broadcast television. Very contextual information about what's going on, very specific to that environment. We can control the number of people that comes through the turnstiles. That's not a problem, right? But once people are in the building, it's very difficult to control if everybody goes to one end of the floor or one end of a particular floor, right? Being able to use digital signage and our Wi-Fi access points in the ceiling, the things that allow you to stay connected to your wireless network, we're actually using that now to understand density of how people are on the floor. Using your mobile device is really a tracking device. We anonymize the data. We don't know who's there, right? That isn't an issue. What we're trying to do here is just understand the density of people within a given environment and provide information to folks on, hey, it's time to separate. It's time to move around. And this information is spread all over the workplace environment. It's becoming a really important part of the strategy on people going back into the office. When they go back to the office, obviously the workplace environment is going to be different too. Things like shared telephones and shared telephone devices probably will be removed for the short term until we can find ways of making sure they're clean and sanitized. We are moving, I think, in a lot of our operations, and it's arguably what we see going on in the industry also, from a hot desking environment where people sort of pop in from desk to desk, to hoteling, where you kind of get a desk for the day for those that don't have an assigned seat. We are not dramatically shifting to a assigned workplace model. And I think this is an important point to bring up. We are not dramatically changing our workplace strategy because of COVID, right? We were leaning in sort of an open environment based on lots of places to collaborate. We still think that's what people want when they come to the workplace. We just need to make some accommodations to make sure it's safe and people feel comfortable going there. It's also about pushing content out to people's devices, right? And using that contextual knowledge around the workplace that we picked up from, in this case, our wireless access points, to tell people, hey, or our badging systems, to be able to push messaging to our employees that say, hey, don't bother coming to New York today, or don't come to the Tokyo office, we're already at capacity, right? We need to make sure that we keep employees informed, and these thresholding apps that allow management to really, or operations to really understand how the workplace is being used are becoming really, really important, right? Setting thresholds and being able to manage those thresholds, and having those things, when things exceed a threshold, making sure that not only it controls the access systems, but in addition to that, makes that information known to the population, that things are, the situation is such that it's not appropriate to go to that location. We also think there's going to be an explosion of video conferencing in the workplace also. There was a study that I saw from Fortune magazine a couple weeks back that had some really interesting insights in it. And they polled the Fortune 500 CEOs, and they asked them two questions. They asked them nine questions. I think two are very relevant for today's conversation. The first question was, when do you think employees, a majority of your employees, will return back to their typical work location? 26% of the executives said never. So that really leads us to believe there's going to be a lot more remote working, a lot more work at home, which is logical. I think a lot of us have thought about that. The second question in that survey was really telling. When do you think business travel would return to pre-pandemic levels? 51% of the executives said never. So you think about that in the context of the workplace, and you think about a lot less travel and a lot more people working at home, it's lending itself to a much more dispersed workplace environment, right? Or a much more dispersed workforce. And our ability to maintain connections is really going to rely on technology like video conferencing. And we see video conferencing exploding now into the marketplace, right? Both in the office and as well as home. But it's going to be a bit different. We think that a lot of the video conferencing that's out there is a big push now to go hands-free with everything. Think about those sort of voice command type services that you have at home. Those are going to be widely available in the office environment. Hey, join this meeting, share my content, add this, call this person, either through voice commands or a controlled device, right? One of the things we're seeing is people have a higher propensity to want to use a device that they trust than maybe a shared tablet that's on a desk, as you see sort of in this image. So we think that voice commands are going to be, and using a mobile device or a controlled or a known device to control the experience is going to be really important. We see these environments being also used as digital signage, right? So this is an example of something in one of our offices where when the device is not being used, what we're doing is we're using it to put content up there to keep people informed around proper behaviors in the workplace, around social distancing, and encouraging them to use voice commands to start a meeting. Actually, one of the more interesting things that in this area of rapid innovation, one of our engineers in Europe wrote a few weeks ago a little bit of code that we're deploying on all of our video endpoints. Our video endpoints can actually count people in the room through its camera technology. And what we're doing now is using that to compare against what the density of that room is supposed to be. So in this case, if somebody, if 3 people go into a room that's really meant for 1 person during this COVID period, they'll get a little message that said, for your safety, please move outside please reduce the number of people in this room. It's really important to drive those behaviors. We're also playing around with some ideas now of how can we use this technology to understand a state change, meaning there were people in a room before and now there aren't. Should I create a service ticket to have facilities come and clean the space? So as much as we can use the existing technology in place, I hope you see the theme here, right? Use the existing technology in place to change, to offer new accommodations for our people as they move to the office. That's really our goal, right? To leverage what we have. And we're also seeing, I think really interesting, we're working with a partner now, starting to see video move outside of the conference rooms. We're starting to see video being much more mobile, moving into the open office, allowing people to social distance and separate. And I think this is a really important thing also. The reality is people are going to come to the office. They're going to look at the office very differently. And everything that we sort of hear with internally and what we hear with clients now is the workplace will remain a destination for collaboration. But as a general rule, in many parts of the world, people aren't going to run to the office to get work done, right? Typical, if you have a day full of heads down work, you probably choose to do that elsewhere. But the workplace will remain a place for people to get together safely. And they're going to expect the workplace to contain something more than they have at home, right? And that's going to need to be there to draw people back into the workplace environment. One other thing we're actually playing with also is this idea of how we can use wayfinding within the workplace to keep people safe, how we can share with them areas of the floor that are dense and get them from their desk to a conference room or a collaboration space that's truly available in the safest way possible. Think about this as the typical wayfinding that you use in your automobile, or if you're walking out in the street, think about that for the workplace. And the idea here is what we're trying to do is keep people safe, getting them from point A to point B in the workplace the most efficient way possible with the least amount of collisions and the least amount of people bumping into sort of groups of people, right? So we're trying to use this technology as a way to reinforce social distancing. So where are we heading, right? I think there's a lot can be had here, right? When we think of this final phase, which is the thrive phase of the workplace, and the return to the workplace, we move from survive to revive. Now we're going to go to thrive. I think there's a real opportunity here, right? To move forward and capitalize on everything we've learned through the last 13 weeks it's been now. Obviously, we'll continue to learn, but we're going to move to intelligent use of the workplace. Right. And by that, I mean, people are going to intelligently think about when they need to be in the office. They're not going to just show up to just because that's typically where they work. They're going to make very conscious decisions on days to be in and days not to be in. I think it gives us an opportunity to redesign our workplaces. I'm starting to see both internally to what we're thinking, but with other clients, they're skewing a lot more towards much more collaborative work environments, and even changing the density of the work and place environments, and changing the mix of workplace. I was with a client a few weeks back. She had told me, and this was a medical equipment manufacturer. She said, when I came into this job 7 years ago, I was 30% conference rooms and 70%, cubicles and offices. She says, I'm now 50-50. If I lean forward and think about what I'm going to be in 2 to 3 years, I could be 70-30 the other direction. I could have 70% of my office real estate being collaboration based, and only 30% individual work areas. And largely, she believed that would be on a much smaller footprint. Right. So I think there's once again opportunity to optimize our real estate portfolios, and some of the goodness that comes around that, and being able to reinvest some of that savings into things, accommodations that make the workplace much more a draw. Things we're thinking about are more richer virtual experiences. We're actually trialing some internal software right now around contact tracing, which we think is pretty exciting. So just another way that we can ensure our folks are safe. If anybody does come back and tell us they've been infected, that we can say, well, when you were in the workplace, these are the people you ran into, and we can notify them. I think there's going to be a whole market of concierge applications that are going to be coming into the workplace environment too. And with that, and in addition to that, tools that allow for more effective knowledge capture. Think about Snapchat for the enterprise, where we capture little nuggets of information. That's going to be really important with this next generation of worker coming in. Those that are very video centric, they're going to expect tools like that. I think you're going to see more intelligent wayfinding, and I think there's going to be a big move around healthy building technology. I think long term, the message that we continue to share is that the behaviors learned through this experience that we've had in this pandemic are going to long outlive the crisis itself. As I said, there's going to be some great opportunities here around optimizing your real estate portfolios. I think you're going to see some opportunities to save there. I think a lot of that savings, or some of that savings, is going to go back into the employee and into the employee experiences, both inside and outside the workplace. I think this opportunity also allows us to rethink our talent acquisition strategies, though. The fact is, we realize that people can be productive at home. Does that lend itself to thinking about attracting talent in different markets and not being confined to a geographic area? And I think it also allows us to embrace new sources of talent, meaning semi-retired, part-time, flexible working. I think that market's going to also explode too, right? This idea that the workplace was sort of the glue that combined everybody together. I think we have to start revisiting and thinking about the workplace more as a virtual experience than a physical experience. I also think long-term, we're also going to we need to rethink not only the work styles and workspaces that we've spent so much time in the last half hour talking about, but we're going to have to focus on workflow. This idea of not only how people work or where they work, but how work gets done. I think it's high time that we think about re-engineering and optimizing how work flows within a business, and rethink about that as the workplace becomes much more dispersed and distributed. So in summary, as I said, hopefully some of the key points you took out of this, right? As I said before, we really think the behaviors changes will long outlive the crisis, right? So I think this is not a temporary thing. We're going to need to address this and continue to address change, and adaptability and flexibility are going to truly rule the day here, right? Being able to quickly pivot. We think offices and geographies are going to open and close potentially at certain times of the year, and our ability to pivot quickly is really going to define our success. We think long-term, the workplace remains a destination for collaboration, and those collaboration activities and collaboration, not just collaboration, but socialization and learning. And building workplaces around those three disciplines are going to be critical. The workplace is going to need to work a lot harder to not only earn the trust, but be a magnet for drawing people back into the workplace, right? It's going to have to offer something more than I do at home. Blending of the physical and virtual work worlds is going to be critical, and how we can sort of remove the gaps and deficiencies between the physical and virtual worlds. I think video and social tools are going to be really, really important in that. And obviously, innovate, right? The opportunities are now for real estate, HR, and IT to work together to truly bring out new solutions and new approaches to the workplace environment that use what you already have in this adaptable world and get yourself. And it's an area of constant innovation and ideation that I think is going to be the true success factor here. So with that, I thank you for your time today. Hopefully you've learned a few things here. Every person is on their own journey. As I've always shared, the workplace is like a fingerprint. No two fingerprints are the same, and no two workplaces are the same. And how we blend, real estate and HR and IT, and with that, space design, technology, and people and culture truly define your fingerprint. And no time more important than now, as we are moving forward in the new normal. But once again, thank you for your time today, and good luck.